Welcome to this website with the Land Portal Foundation, the Asian NGO Coalition, ANGOC, the Association for Land Reform and Development, ALRD, and the Global Forum on Agricultural Research and Innovation, GFAR. And it's taking place against the background of a 6-month collective drive to mainstream the land rights of the rural poor in the climate agenda. COP28 is almost upon us. Thank you for joining us. My name is Henry Bonsu. I'm a broadcaster and journalist of UK and Ghanaian background. I'm delighted to be moderating today's session on securing tenure, enhancing disaster management and adaptation. Now, this webinar will focus on the underexplored nexus of climate change, natural disasters, and tenure insecurity through a series of presentations. Our speakers will provide insights and highlight practices of mitigation and adaptation in the context of insecure land rights. They will also compare positive case studies as well as challenges. First, let me go through some all-important housekeeping rules. Now, the webinar is in English, but we will have simultaneous translations in Spanish, French, and Portuguese. To access the translations, you just need to go to the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window, click on it, and select the language you want. The webinar will last 60 minutes. We've set aside about 15 minutes for Q&A. Could be a bit more. If you have questions, please post them in the Q&A box and not in the chat box. Do use the chat box to let us know who you are, which organization you belong to, and where you are joining us from. Feel free to follow the live tweeting from the Land Portal Twitter account. And finally, we're also recording today's session and we'll share the link later. Now we've got that out of the way, let us turn to today's topic. Climate change-induced disasters and communities' attempts to protect themselves and create solutions are now a top priority on the climate agenda. At the center of mitigation and adaptation discussions have been urban populations, particularly those in informal settlements. Meanwhile, the rural poor with limited or no access to land tend to be overlooked. Not only are peasants highly vulnerable to the impact of floods, droughts, storms, or wildfires, because they have insecure tenure rights, records, or formal registration documents, when natural disasters strike, they often lose their land and are forced to migrate. Moreover, insecure land rights provide little incentives or capacities to mitigate or adapt to the effects of climate change. Think about it. People are less likely to plant trees or protect the forest if they fear that their land could be taken away at any time. Protecting people's land rights likely leads to long-term investments in land and may help to combat deforestation. Now, this conversation is of particular importance given next week's commencement of the COP28 in Dubai. Let me introduce you to our speakers. Now, in the interest of fairness, I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order. Now, we have Bubul Ahmed. Now, Bubul is a legal and development professional with over 15 years of experience with key expertise in human rights, gender sensitivity, inclusion, land rights, environmental justice, and conflict sensitivity, and peace building. There's a lot there, as well as legal aid. Alternative dispute resolution, so ADR. He is the deputy manager at the Association for Land Reform and Development, the ALRD. Now, we were due to have two other panelists, one from Brazil and one from Nicaragua, both female speakers who are deeply steeped in the land rights movement, but sadly, due to ongoing tensions in their region, they are unable to join us. And in some way, you might say, this highlights the issues of context fragility, of violence, of indigenous struggles that we are focusing on today. Our Brazilian speaker was due to be Sarah Marques, who is the co-founder of the Caranguejo Tabayeres Resisted Collective. She's a popular educator, a Black woman, and a single mother. I'll tell you more about her, even though she isn't here. It's important to know because we do have someone who will speak on her behalf. Now, Sarah is the counselor for Be Democracy in the state of Pernambuco and a member of the Pernambuco Black Women's Network, the Climate Observatory, and the Climate Adaptation Network. Now, Sarah has shared a video of her hometown, Caranguejo Tabayeres in Recife. The video shows us the reorganization of the community garden created during the COVID-19 pandemic to guarantee food in the community. Let's run that video now, please.
Just a moment, I'll get it going.
We're just waiting for that video to run, and then we will see a video from our other colleague, and then we'll begin our discussion. But these videos are important to give you context. And then we'll see a video from our other colleague, and then we'll begin our discussion. But these videos are important to give you context. And then we'll see a video from our other colleague, and then we'll begin our discussion. But these videos are important to give you context. So you saw Sarah and her community in the middle of their activity. And it's important to get a sense of just how grassroots her organization, Caranguejo Tabayeres Resiste, is, the collective. So there you see them in the community garden and mobilizing from the grassroots, guaranteeing food in the community. It's an inspiration to see. Amanda Martinez will be speaking on her behalf in a few minutes' time. But let's move to our second video, and it depicts the everyday struggle of the Munda people of Bangladesh. Now, Munda is one of the indigenous communities in the country. It's on the front line of the climate crisis, rising sea levels, and salt infiltrates. Let us run that video of the Munda people in Bangladesh.
আমি আনন্দিনী মুন্ডা, গ্রাম দাইতিনাখালী। আমার বয়স 35 বছর। আমার এক ছেলে এক মেয়ে আছে। আমার পরিবারের সদস্য সংখ্যা 4 জন এবং আমি পড়াশোনা করেছি ক্লাস 9 অবধি। আমার 2004 সালে বিয়ে হয় কয়রা থেকে দাইতিনাখালী। এখানে আসার পরে 2009 সালে আইলা হয়। তারপরে আইলার পরে আমফানের পরে বুলবুল, প্রতি বছরই তো ঘূর্ণিঝড় আসে, আইলার পরে বেশি ক্ষতি হয়েছে, আমফানেও ক্ষতি হয়েছে, বুলবুলিতে এই আসে, মানে প্রত্যেক ঝড়েই আমাদের ক্ষতির সম্মুখীন হতে হয়। ঝড়ের সময় আমরা সাইক্লোন সেন্টার তো অনেক দূরে, সেখানে যেতে পারি না, এবং আমাদের পাশে আমাদের গ্রামে যে ঘরটায় উঁচু সেখানেই থাকি, এবং স্কুল আছে সেখানেই। ঘূর্ণিঝড় ছাড়াও আমাদের ভেড়িবাঁধ ভেঙে যায় প্রাকৃতিক দুর্যোগের কারণে। ভেড়িবাঁধ ভেঙে গেলে ভেতরে নোনা জল ছাপিয়ে আসে, সেই সময় আমাদের ব্যাপক একটা ক্ষতি হয়। সেই সময় আমরা না রান্না খাওয়া করতে পারি, না হচ্ছে খাওয়া দাওয়া, ছেলে মেয়েদের একটা নিরাপদ আশ্রয় নিতে পারি। এক জায়গা থেকে আরেক জায়গায় যাওয়া খুব একটা কষ্টের ব্যাপার। মায়া জিনিসটা এমন একটা জিনিস যে যেতে খুবই কষ্ট হয়, আর না আসে মানুষের প্রতি মানুষের যে ভালোবাসা বা শ্রদ্ধা বা এটা ইয়ে থাকে যে এক এলাকা থেকে আরেক এলাকায় গেলে সেটা কিন্তু হয় না। সেই কারণেই আমরা যেতে পারিনি। বলতে গেলে তাহলে তো সেই দুর্যোগের বিষয় বলতে হয়। সেই সময় থেকে আমাদের এখনো পর্যন্ত খাবার পানির সমস্যা। খাবার পানির জন্য আমাদের সিরিয়ালে যেতে হয়, সিরিয়ালের পিছনে থাকলে অনেক দেরি হয়, সে সময় ফিরেও আসতে হয়, সেখানে সিরিয়ালে পানি না থাকলে আসতে দিই। চৈত্র বৈশাখ জ্যৈষ্ঠ এই 3 মাস আমাদের খাবার পানি সংকট ব্যাপক হয়। সেই সময় আমাদের পুকুরে পানি খাই, যেহেতু পুকুরে পানি শুকিয়ে যায়। মুন্ডা নারীরা যেহেতু নদীর জলে এবং চিংড়ি ঘেরে কাজ করে, সেই কারণে আমাদের যে পিরিয়ডটা হয় ঋতুকালীন সময়, সেই পিরিয়ডটা যাতে বন্ধ থাকে, আমাদের যে অসহায় পরিবার, এটাকে দূর করার জন্য আমাদের এই পিরিয়ড বন্ধ রাখার জন্য যে বড়িটা খায়, খাওয়ার পরে আমাদের স্বাস্থ্যহীনতায় অনেক সমস্যা হয়, চর্মরোগ হয়, চুলকানি হয়, ঘা পাসরা, জরায়ুর সমস্যা, এগুলো তো প্রতিনিয়ত। ভূমি মানে শক্তি। ভূমি থাকলে এত টেনশন থাকতো না মাথায়, ছেলে মেয়েদের নিয়ে এত ভাবতাম না যে আসলে ওদের বড় হয়ে ভবিষ্যতে লেখাপড়া শিখবে, কিন্তু আসলে তো ভূমি নেই। আমরা দীর্ঘদিন ধরে এখানে বসবাস করছি, কিন্তু আমাদের কোনো জমি দেব বলে দেয় নাই। যে কোনো সময় আমাদের সরকার যদি উঠে যেতে বলে উঠে যেতে পারি, কই যাব, যাওয়ার তো জায়গা নেই। আমাদের নিজের কোনো জমি নেই, আমরা তো উদ্বাস্ত হয়ে আমাদের জীবন কাটাতে হয়। খাস জমির জন্য আমরা চেয়ারম্যানের কাছে দরখাস্ত দিয়েছি, এবং সেখান থেকে ভূমিহীন সনদপত্র পেয়েছি। এরপরে আর কোনো খোঁজখবর পাইনি। আমাদের নিজেদের যদি কোনো জমি থাকতো, তাহলে আমাদের সন্তানদের পায়ের নিচে মাটি থাকতো।
Well, that was quite powerful. That was quite powerful. Just think of what that woman said. Land gives you power. It gives you a solid future, especially for your children. So that was the Munda community in Bangladesh on the front line of the climate crisis. So let's start our discussion. We'll start with Bubul. Can you tell us more about the key challenges for families in the coastal parts of Bangladesh, as well as the char lands, the people with insecure land rights? And also, let's talk about the challenges for them as they adapt to climate change. Which strategies do they use? Please go ahead, Bubul.
Yeah. Hello, Henry. Can
Hello.
you hear me? Yeah.
That was a very powerful video, and it's really set us up nicely. So now please flesh out what we were thinking. Tell us about the challenges and the strategies.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and good morning and good afternoon, whatever applies to you on the globe. Yeah, if I follow the question, the answer would be in the coastal part and shorelands. So we have two different geographical regions in Bangladesh, which are vulnerable to climate change effects. And there, families face significant challenges due to climate change and insecure land rights. Let me give me more details about the vulnerability of these families to climate hazards. For coastal regions, the coastal regions are prone to cyclones, storm surges, coastal erosion, and the southeastern part of Bangladesh, which is near the Bay of Bengal, the sea we have, has undergone extreme weather events such as successive cyclones from 1988 to 2022. Almost every year, we have faced cyclones, drought, change in precipitation patterns. One example is that the cyclone Sidor in 2007. Another example is cyclone Ayla, which happened in 2009. And the last one is the more devastated one is cyclone Ampan, which had the landfall in 2020. And all those cyclones swept away houses every time, and properties of many families, many shrimp and soft shell crab farms that used to dominate that landscape in that coastal areas in the southwestern part, where this video were taken from. All the lands we see livestock such as cows, goats, and chickens become a rarity, and land use become a challenge after these extreme weather events. According to members of the community, we have found that the high salinity of farmlands following the cyclones affected both the growth and quality of crops and livestock. Due to salinity, many agricultural lands become largely unproductive. Rising sea levels exacerbate flooding and salinity intrusion in this part, also affect livelihood and habitability as well. In Bangladesh, we have thousands of shorelands, and I'm talking about shorelands. So this is a very unique feature of this delta. It's a delta country. And what is a chore? If I briefly explain, that is a piece of land, or more like an island in the course of a river or in the estuary, is called a chore. And families of shorelands often face flood and river erosion. And most of the larger shorelands, which are situated in the coastal area, additionally face cyclones, storm surge, and coastal erosion. So do erratic weather patterns, such as hotter summers and milder winters. This has negatively affected farmers' production calendars and expected incomes, I mean the productivity of the crops. Families in the coastal areas and shorelands often lack secure land tenure. This insecurity hampers their ability to face and rebuild after the extreme weather events like cyclones, storm surges, or floods, including river erosions. Showing proof of land title is essential to avail credit here and in receiving agricultural and social services that are offered by government following by any climate hazards. But due to lack of tenure security, most of the families become left out of these services, which make them more vulnerable than those with secure land tenure. Tenure insecurity also hampers the family's ability to invest in sustainable agricultural practices and other innovations. In terms of adaptation strategies, here we have found that agricultural households often adopt various disaster response strategies to reduce the impact of climate change on their livelihood, such as diversifying their income sources, changing cropping practices, crop diversification. For one example would be one example is that cultivating more salinity tolerant varieties. Other adaptation strategies include growing vegetables on mud towers, in the dams, in the floating beds. I mean the beds which are which are prepared on the some floating materials, and cultivating saline-tolerant vegetables around the shrimp ponds, applying recycled household water for irrigation, vegetable production, installing ponds and filters to filter water, rainwater harvesting, rearing livestock, forestation in the islands, community-based early warning system, a nature-based solution, for example, applying indigenous people's traditional knowledge and customs on conservation of mangrove forest, which has been shown in the video, the Sundarban. It is one of the largest mangrove forests on the planet. So that is, thank you.
Bubul, tremendous. That's an excellent start to our discussion. And it's great to see that the people at the grassroots in the Charlands and these vulnerable delta areas are responding to what they've seen, and they're embracing techniques of adaptation, as well. Of course, we've got the long-term mitigation, but they're doing things immediately in terms of diversifying, looking at different types of crop rotation, considering the challenges they're meeting increasingly frequently. So that's great. Thank you very much. And I'm going to come back to you a little bit later on, Bubul, but that's great. Okay, so we've discussed the situation initially in Bangladesh. I'm delighted to say that Sarah Marquez can join us. Before we hear from her, I would like our audience, just let me remind you to please use a Q&A box to send your questions. And also, please identify yourself and your organization. Lots of you are doing that. It's great to see people joining us from Beijing, from Kampuchea, from Nairobi, from Australia. This is wonderful, from all over the world. This is a truly global event. You can hear my enthusiasm. People are really interested. Okay, so a reminder of who Sarah Marquez is. You saw her in the video a moment or two ago. Now, Sarah is a grassroots organizer in the community of Caranguejo Tabayeras. The community has insecure land rights. So, Sarah, let me ask you, and I know you're going to speak in Portuguese, and we have translation, I'm pleased to say, looking at the little globe on the bottom. Sarah, what are the key challenges for families in the northeast region of Brazil, specifically your community? How are they adapting to climate change? What strategies are they using? Sarah, welcome, and over to you.
Bom dia, eu sou Sara Marques, eu sou uma mulher negra, gorda, de Caranguejo Tabaiares, uma comunidade pesqueira centenária no Recife, Pernambuco, aqui no Brasil, no Nordeste do Brasil. Nascer no Nordeste do Brasil, numa comunidade que foi ocupada, né, aterrada pelo próprio povo naquela abolição da escravatura, que não existiu de verdade aqui no Brasil, que até hoje a gente tem uma abolição mentirosa da escravatura, né, da escravidão, significa estar sempre inseguro. Nós estamos num quilombo urbano, né? São pessoas, na sua maioria, mulheres negras, né? Que vivem uma insegurança muito grande, porque os trabalhos do governo, né? Os serviços do governo não chegam até nós, né? Então, a gente, a não ser a polícia, né? A não ser o braço armado do governo. As estratégias são viver juntas, né? Viver em comunidade e cada um se ajudar, né? Eu sou uma educadora popular e formei um coletivo chamado Caranguejo Tabaiares Resiste, né? Cofundei com outras pessoas para defender a terra, né? Isso já é um exemplo de como a gente vive e de que estratégias nós usamos para sobreviver, né? Numa terra que é nossa, mas que a gente não tem ações diretas do governo a gente fundou o Coletivo Caranguejo Trabalhar e Resiste para resistir à retirada de casas do governo, né? Que deveria ter trabalhos para defender quem está na terra e tem menos recursos, né? Então, isso já é um exemplo da insegurança que nós vivemos nessas comunidades. Nossa comunidade é ribeirinha, é bem pertinho do rio, né? E passa canais. Recife é bem cortado por canais. Um deles é esse de Caranguejo Tabaiares, que deságua num rio muito importante da cidade, que é o rio Capibaribe. Mas nesse rio também, nesse canal, passa todo o esgoto, não só da comunidade, como dessa região oeste da cidade. E isso deságua no rio Capibaribe, então, que é bem central, que encontra com Beberibe. Que aqui, Recife, Pernambuco, é conhecido como quem fala das coisas muito grandes. Então, a gente diz que junta o rio Capibaribe e o rio Beberibe e forma o Oceano Atlântico. Daqui. Então, a gente, se não cuida desse rio, a gente não está cuidando do mundo, sabe? Então, se não cuida do nosso território, a gente precisa cuidar do mundo.
Sarah, tremendous. Thank you very much. That's a great contribution. Also, we're so pleased to have you and to hear you describe what is going on the ground. Your Caranguejo Taberes, the Resiste, that you have done this in response to the lack of services, which starts off with slavery and is still there, hanging over you, but you are using the community and the organization to respond, because if the only services you're getting are the police and security trying to harass you, well, that tells us a lot about what you're having to cope with, but you are challenging it in a fantastic community way. We'll come back to you in a moment, Sarah. Thank you very much indeed. Bubu, I'm coming back to you now. In what ways do more frequent and extreme natural disasters contribute to tenure insecurity in Bangladesh? This is very important because we saw it illustrated in the video you shared with us, and a number of people are posting questions for you, and I think also questions will come to Sarah. But for now, Bubu, explain how these more frequent and extreme natural disasters are contributing to tenure insecurity in Bangladesh.
Thank you. Natural disasters. If I talk about natural disasters, which is more frequent and extreme in terms of frequency and extreme effect, I would describe two, especially two. One is flood, and other is river erosion. That have a high impact on land tenure and high land use issues. Every year, many parts of Bangladesh are flooded by heavy rainfall and the overflow of river banks. Our areas, which is in the northeast part of Bangladesh, experiences flash floods almost every year. Poverty forces people to cultivate marginal lands that may be too steep, too dry, or too wet, or too prone to erosion. I mean, prone to more vulnerability. That means they dare to. I mean, they are having no option than to go to that marginalized lands, and also they occupy fragile public lands and the areas that are vulnerable to flooding, high tides, and storm surges. So one important example of such marginal flood-prone areas are the chorlands. Chor dwellers are mostly the landless families, whereas land ownership of these chor areas is at times highly disputed. I mean, land tenure security is at, I mean, a very vulnerable condition. River erosion is a serious threat that people living along the rivers and the coastal areas have to face on daily basis. Given the population density and unequal land distribution, many poor rural people are forced to live in flood erosion-prone areas along the rivers and the coast. It has been estimated that at least 20,000 families become homeless due to river bank erosion every year and are forced to migrate within the locality or to urban areas, thus contributing to the growing number of urban poor. When river erosion occurs very fast and suddenly, people can lose everything overnight. And in other instances, river erosion is more gradual and people have time to move their assets, for example, their house and belongings. But loss of cultivable lands and homestead is inevitable. They have to lose. The Bangladesh Center for Environmental and Geographic Information, CEGIS, this is one of the service of Bangladesh government, notes that every year Bangladesh loses 32 square kilometers of land due to erosion in rivers, and more than 250,000 people become victims of land erosion every year. So many people, one estimates was, the previous estimates was the 20,000 families become homeless every year, and here they become affected of land erosion. Many of the people losing their land have no other options than moving to major urban centers, and some end up as pavement dwellers with even a slum shack beyond their reach. Moreover, it is estimated by 2050, the rate of bank erosion along the three main rivers system will increase by 13%, and by 2100 by 80%. So 18%, sorry. As a result, some 15 to 20 million people living in these areas would lose their homes, lands, and area-specific livelihoods. Other climate hazards like storm or tidal surges, coastal erosion, landslides in hill areas cause land loss and adversely impact on tenure security. So, yeah, thank you. That is the...
Bubul, you paint a pretty terrifying picture there. If you look at the rate of bank erosion that you gave us and consider the population of people who are in a highly vulnerable situation, losing their homes, lands, and area-specific livelihoods. And for context, Bangladesh's population is growing, of course. It's now around 170 million, of which nearly 2/3 or so are rural. And just looking at the square kilometers, 148,000 square kilometers. So again, we can put into context the amount that is being lost every year. Bubul, a terrifying picture, but thank you for giving it to us. And more questions are coming in for you. I'll put them to you shortly. Sarah, back to you. I can see you waiting for us. Here's a question. You mentioned that you're working with a lot of women of color specifically. In what ways are women and men differently affected by tenure insecurity in Brazil? Let's talk about gender here. Does it affect them differently in their response to climate change? Over to you, Sarah.
Nessa formação do coletivo Caranguejos Tabaiares Resiste, né, que eu tô nessa cofundação enquanto mulher negra, porque a gente diz aqui no Brasil que a falta de casa é uma mulher negra. Aqui em Recife, a gente faz essa discussão também, porque se você for para o recorte, né, a maioria das mulheres, a maioria das casas são chefiadas por mulheres e são chefiadas por mulheres negras, porque nós vivemos num país que ainda não aboliu a escravatura, né, a escravidão. Nós vivemos num país que tem uma falsa democracia racial e que as mulheres, como sempre, estão num lado muito mais vulnerável, né? Mas também num lado mas sempre num lado muito mais forte e combatente, né? São as mulheres que tomam conta desses lares, né? São as mulheres que entendem a precisão, né, de você ter uma casa. A gente vive num país, né? Por exemplo, nós estamos no Novembro Negro no Brasil, né? Em alguns estados, inclusive do país, é feriado dia 20 de novembro, e um simbolismo de zumbi, né, dos Palmares, que foi morto, né, um chefe de quilombo que foi morto. Mas a gente tem um país que, antes da sua Constituição Federal, que foi em 1888, em 1850, você tem uma lei de terra, né, que pobres, né, que quem não tem posse não teria direito à terra. E quem é que não tinha, quem não tinha posses? O povo preto, né, que ainda estava saindo da escravidão. E aí, falando de zumbi, a gente fala de Dandara, a mulher de zumbi, que com ele seguiu como símbolo de quilombos, né? Dos quilombos. E essas mulheres vêm até hoje defendendo seus territórios. São essas mulheres que sentem o impacto, primeiro, das enchentes, né? Dessa mudança climática. Nós estamos em Recife, e Recife é a terceira cidade do país, né? Que pode desaparecer. Nós estamos abaixo do nível do mar, né? E esses impactos são sentidos primeiro pelas mulheres, porque são elas que chefiam a família, são elas que entendem que se preocupam principalmente para onde vão seus filhos, são elas que estão em casa e quando a enchente vem, que leva suas coisas, né? Que leva, inclusive aqui em Recife, o ano passado, nós tivemos uma grande tragédia, 130 pessoas mortas. E essas pessoas têm cores, têm a cor, né? Têm a cara. Não são as pessoas mais ricas, são sempre pessoas como eu, mulheres negras, meninos negros, porque principalmente quem está na casa, né? Quando a enchente vem ou a barreira desliza, né? Nesses lugares, como a gente falou antes, que o governo não chega, né? Que o Estado não chega. Quem estão somos nós, né? E a gente vive essa insegurança. E as mulheres, como maioria, né, de chefe de família, são as que sentem mais isso. E as que lutam, né? Se vocês forem fazer qualquer estudo do Brasil e do Recife, né, nesse recorte que eu faço, que eu falo do território de Caranguejo Tabaiaras para o mundo. Hoje, literalmente, eu estou falando do território de Caranguejos Tabaiaras para o mundo, né? Que eu estou falando com vocês, pessoas de vários países diferentes. Se a gente for falar disso, vocês vão entender que se vocês forem fazer esse estudo diretamente, a maioria das casas, dos lares brasileiros, são chefiados por mulheres negras, com rendas baixíssimas, né? E que precisa sempre arrumar uma forma de sobrevivência, de adaptação, né? A gente tem uma discussão, eu faço parte de uma rede de adaptação climática antirracista, porque, antes de tudo, se pensa na raça, né? Porque, como eu já disse, tem a cara, tem a cor e tem o povo, que recebe primeiro esse impacto das mudanças climáticas, porque a gente vive em cidades que, se você for olhar, né, por cima, ou se você for olhar Recife no turismo, você vai ver que existem duas cidades. A cidade de Recife, que você vai turistar, que você vê que é abaixo do nível do mar, mas você não se assusta, e existe a cidade que eu vivo, Caranguejo Tabaiares, que, se você chegar lá, você vai ver que tem o canal cortando, que tem a maré e que tem casas com poucas estruturas que foi construída por essas mulheres, né? E que é sustentada por essas mulheres. E por isso as mulheres sentem um impacto muito mais forte.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed. A very powerful answer. And you gave us a lot of history there. And you helped us to understand why you see this through such a strong gendered and ethnic lens. It's very important, the gender and the color of those who are most vulnerable in your country. And as Romy Sato has just posted, for those who may not know it, Quilombo is a denomination for communities of Black enslaved people who resisted slavery that prevailed in Brazil for over 300 years and was officially abolished in 1888. I say officially because, as Sarah says, it is still not gone. You're saying it is still there. Now, for the final round of questions, because we don't have a huge amount of time, I would like Bubul and Sarah to restrict your answers to 2 minutes maximum so that we can at least get a few questions in. Bubul, final question to you, and it's about knowledge and data. Bubul, what data do you rely on to raise awareness of the interface between land rights and climate change? How accessible is the data, Bubul? Bubul, we're struggling to get you. Perhaps you, Bubul. Yes, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yes, please, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. In terms of credibility of data related to land rights and climate change, we prefer either civil society organizations study or a non-governmental research institutions or academies, for example, universities. Although the government statistics office and other research institutions and international finance institutions like World Bank more often carry out surveys which cover a large sample size of respondents, but those surveys focus more on the macro and physical impacts of climate change. Social impacts of climate change from the perspective of the community, which we think is important, but that is something is often missing in those surveys. One issue of the CSO study or of a study conducted by a particular department of a university is the data accessibility. Online versions of those study reports are not much available, despite the current trend of publishing the study report in the ResearchGate or other service, other web portals. But same goes for government data. We might get access to the national data. We have an NSO, National Statistics Office, that is Bangladesh Bureau of Statistics. We can get access to that national data, but it is very difficult to get the governmental data at the micro level. In recent times, I have found some useful data relation to land rights, climate change from FAO, UN Habitat publications, which is on solid ground title. But we also rely on the media reports, and some media house they have very useful and resourceful articles, and they have also have that community voices in their reports. So we also rely on their data also. Thank you.
Bubul, thank you very much too. Thank you for being brief. And Sarah, I would ask you to be similarly brief. From your experience, how can secure land rights contribute to the successful implementation of climate change adaptation measures? Please, Sarah.
Como eu falei, né, abri falando, nós temos um coletivo Caranguejo, né, Trabalhares Resiste, que é um coletivo que tem o nome da nossa comunidade, é um coletivo de resistência, né? A gente pode garantir ficando em nossos territórios, né? Nossos territórios são seguros para a gente, mas não tem estrutura, né? Porque os governos não dão estrutura. A gente no Caranguejo Trabalhares Resiste, nós entramos com pedido de regularização fundiária no governo, mas nós somos de uma comunidade que é uma zona especial de interesse social, né? Ela tem leis próprias que garantem que a gente fique e que tem uma posse de terra que não pode, que a prefeitura e que ninguém, nenhum poder imobiliário possa comprar, né? É uma comunidade que tem leis específicas, que deveria ter um cuidado específico, porque nós somos mais vulneráveis, né? E aí a gente tem essa resistência, né? Tem representantes que fazem essa discussão com a prefeitura e com a sociedade civil, mas mesmo assim o governo aparelha, né? Vai lá e usa muitas lideranças para tomar, né, essa lei também que foi perto da Constituição Federal, mas a gente age como guardiães, né, de guardiões dessas leis, né, de resistir nos territórios, porque os nossos territórios é quem também faz com que a cidade não seja toda encimentada, né, não tenha todo aquele concreto, sendo uma cidade abaixo do nível do mar, pesqueira, uma cidade que tem os mangues, e quem estuda um pouquinho as mudanças climáticas, o que está acontecendo, sabe a importância dos mangues, né? Para a drenagem das águas que vem do rio, do mar, e quando cai a chuva. E esses territórios são os territórios que tomam conta disso. E a gente faz essa luta, né? Resistindo e dizendo que a gente quer ter a nossa posse da terra, né? Como uma posse de terra que seja mais coletiva, né? E que não abra para essa guerra com os poderes imobiliários, né? Com esse poder e com o poder político, porque eles não cuidam do nosso território enquanto a gente está, mas quando as imobiliárias chegam, elas fazem grandes empreendimentos.
Sarah, thank you very much indeed for explaining the intersection between the land rights at your level in a low-lying city and the successful implementation of climate change adaptation measures, especially when you're looking at the context of big business and development. Fantastic stuff. Right, so let's now move on to the next part of the event. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A. If you have any further questions, please use the Q&A box, and if possible, identify yourself and the organization you belong to. I won't get through every question, but the key ones are, here we go. Here's one for you, Bubu. Helena Paul from EcoNexus says she worked on the voluntary guidelines on the responsible governance of tenure of land and other natural resources. And she wants to know, Bubu, how useful is that, the voluntary guidelines? How useful?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to respond to the question. I would say from our experience, voluntary guidelines, that means the VCTT is very much applicable here, but because we see any kind of policy formulation, any kind of formulation of plan or any kind of measures taken by the state, often the affected people, the communities are left behind, but or few of them can get the chance to incorporate their voices because of the process to select the participants of that consultation, where the community consultation is required. That is not that much inclusive. That selection is very much dependent on the political. That is very much politically driven, and also there are some administrative bias. So the BGTT is very much applicable, so that the community's voice is heard. And also we are talking about this community-led adaptation. Also nowadays we are talking about locally led adaptation. So local people or community people should be the heart of the process. So their voices, their views should be reflected in all the policies, all the plans, and all the projects are supposed to be taken for them. Supposed to be for their resilience and adaptation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bubul. Thank you for being brief. And Sarah, an important question for you. One of our participants wants to know, what are the major lessons learned in securing land rights for traditional communities in the areas where you are working in Recife? The major lessons that you have learned in securing land rights for traditional communities.
Primeiro, que a gente não garantiu, né, a posse da terra, a gente continua em luta e resistindo, né? Mas é isso, a principal lição é que, como a gente começou falando, né, as mulheres estão à frente dessa luta, e não é romantizando, não é achando bonitinho, é a gente resistindo e lutando todo dia, né? A principal lição é que a gente tem que estar juntas, né? E estar montando estratégias para quem deveria garantir esse direito, que são os governos, né? Os governos deveriam garantir esse direito, mas a gente precisa todo dia estar fazendo essas estratégias. Uma das estratégias é essa, eu estou aqui falando para o mundo, porque a gente tem um pedido de regularização fundiária na prefeitura desde 2019. Eles dizem que garantiram esse direito, mas eles não dão o start disso, né? De garantir o direito da gente ter a posse da terra, porque eles não querem que nós estejamos nas nossas terras, né? Então, a melhor forma é se organizar. Então, a gente faz essa organização, mesmo assim, essa organização quase sempre é muito perseguida, né? Essa organização com mulheres negras, com pessoas dessas comunidades, e a gente, vocês viram aí o vídeo da horta, né? E resistir é um pedacinho de cada coisa, né? A gente faz cursos com as mulheres de artesanato, e a horta é um grande lugar de resistência, né? Um grande símbolo, porque quando a gente planta e mostra para o governo que nossa terra, que eles rejeitam, que eles vendem aí por aí e fazem trocas, né, dizendo que essa terra não serve porque eles deixam lá sem estrutura, a gente tira comida dessa terra. Isso é um grande simbolismo, né? Isso é um grande simbolismo. A gente planta da forma que nossos avós e nossas avós plantavam. E isso mostra que nossa terra serve, né? E nossa terra dá frutos. Então, uma das nossas grandes estratégias é tirar do nosso chão, da nossa terra, a comida, né? A erva, né? A erva que faz o chá, que faz o banho e que cuida das pessoas. Então, esse é um grande simbolismo e resistência.
And Sarah, a quick follow-up. You're highly organized, which is excellent. But what about legal support? One of our participants wants to know whether you are getting legal support from any organization.
Né? Como eu falei, nós somos uma zona especial de interesse social e a gente vive a pressão das imobiliárias Mas a gente tem, nessa lei das ex, né, do PRESES, a gente o poder público e o poder do povo junto, né? O povo está junto, fazendo essa discussão. A gente não tem as garantias de direito, né? A gente tem uma Constituição que nos diz que a gente tem direito a ter a moradia, mas a gente está sempre vigilante. A gente, sendo pessoas negras, né? E pessoas que estão nesses territórios que foram ocupados, a gente não tem essa garantia. A gente luta todo dia, como eu disse, a gente luta todo dia pelo nosso chão, pela nossa terra e pela nossa casa. A gente não tem isso garantido, mas a gente junta algumas organizações, a gente tem organizações no Brasil todo, né, no país todo, que faz essa discussão sobre terra e território. E a gente quase sempre, né, nós mulheres negras que estamos nesses territórios, usamos nosso corpo para garantir esse direito, né? Usamos nossa imagem, usamos nossa fala, né, e nossa luta para garantir esse direito à moradia, né, para garantir esse direito à terra. Mas tem organizações que nos apoiam, né, com advogados populares, e a gente vai resistindo dia a dia nessa terra que é nossa, mas que eles querem tomar sempre, porque estando em algumas cidades, né, como a minha, né, em Recife, a gente está sempre em disputa, né? Porque eles sempre querem usar nossas terras, e como também várias cidades, né? Aqui a gente tem pessoas tradicionais, né? Gente que vem antes do descobrimento, daquele mentiroso descobrimento, que está lá, por exemplo, na cidade de Manaus, né? E que eles vão lá e tentam tirar para extravismo, né? De ouro, para garimpar. E aqui nessa cidade, eles garimpam, no Recife, eles garimpam a terra para botar prédio, né? E o país é dividido assim. Mas a gente, a grande força da gente é a nossa luta, o nosso corpo mesmo.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And we've just got enough time for one more question to Bubble. Well, we've got a couple of questions. I'm going to ask you to take them together, Bubble. And you have answered some of this already, but just as a reminder, our participant wants to know what the biggest challenge is for you and government to provide land tenure security in disaster risk areas, okay, to communities. You've answered some of that already, but also this question really, what is the current ownership or tenure situation of the char lands, and have there been any community-led ideas or solutions proposed to improve access, especially that question? What is the current ownership or tenure situation of the char lands, and have there been any community-led ideas or solutions proposed to improve access, Bubu? If you can take the two together, please, and be as brief as you can.
Yeah, I will try to respond these two questions. One answer I will take not more than 2 minutes.
Okay.
One challenge we face is that the top-down approach of solving that land tenure security, because our land management system is governed by the top-down approach. So the policy, we have a policy that is cost land distribution policy, but it is not effective at all, because government have other agenda, they have other interest. So the political economy at this moment, it is very challenging. So we think it is one of the best solution to allocate the public land to the people who are climate vulnerable. So it will help them, it will make their resilience better, and their adaptive capacity will be more sustainable. But instead of recovering the lands which are occupied by the musclemen, the influential people, government is not taking that trouble. Government have the bias, in some case the fear of I mean, there are political bias, administrative bias at the compliance level. For that, these lands are not being recovered and distributed among the vulnerable families, who are mostly the landless people. So by the policy, they are entitled to get that land, but as for the non-compliance of that policy, they are not getting the land access to and the land tenure security over that land. So that is the most vital challenge we found, the non-compliance part. And in terms of chore lands ownership, land ownership, so government have no specific policy for chore lands. It is governed by some other laws, and that khas land policies are applicable. After that law, lands are identified and recorded as government land. So here also the non-compliance of land law policies and laws are also the challenge. And the community, in terms of community-led solution, putting at the national level, yeah, we are trying to maximize the voice of the people by means of community dialogue, and also we have arranged the public hearing where responsible government officials face the public, face the communities, and also at the national level we are advocating for that. The community we have first we do have arranged some consultation with the communities, and with their recommendation we do advocate for at the national level. So yeah, in terms of that community led actions, they are in place, but that is we must confess that that is not that much as we should. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Bubul. Really appreciate your final answer. And unfortunately, participants, and there are many of you, I'm delighted to see you from literally all over the world. We've run out of time and we will have to close the webinar. But thank you very much for staying with us for the last hour, even though we've overrun by a few minutes. And apologies for not being able to take all the questions. Let me thank our speakers, Sarah Marquez from the Caranguejo Tabares Resist Collective, and Bubul Ahmed, Deputy Manager at the Association for Land Reform and Development. Thank you to our audience as well for your participation. And thank you also to our hosts. This webinar has been organized in partnership with the Land Portal Foundation, the Asian NGO Coalition, and the ALRD, and the Global Forum on Agricultural Research and Innovation. I'm delighted to have been your moderator. Thank you very much. I look forward to being with you again. It's been a really energetic and instructive conversation. And let me say finally, have a great day, afternoon, evening.
Thank you, Henry.
Goodbye. Thank you, Bubul. Thank you, Sarah. And God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry.